After my husband's funeral, my son pulled over on a deserted road, looked me in the eye, and told me to get out of the car. I remember the way the gravel crunched under my shoes as I stepped onto the shoulder, still in my black heels from the service. My son, Jacob, didn't even look back when he drove off. The taillights disappeared down the empty stretch of road like none of me, ever mattered. The sun was just starting to set. One of those golden Colorado evenings that makes everything look too pretty for what's actually happening. I stood there for a long while, just holding on to my handbag, wondering what I had missed. What sign? What moment? What warning? The house, the business, my husband's tools, even the little lakeside cabin Richard and I bought 30 years ago with paper route savings and dreams, all of it now belonged to Jacob. My only child. Or so he thought. What Jacob didn't know was that while he was busy playing chess with my life, I'd already flipped the board. But we'll get to that. Let me back up. Before I was standing on the side of that road in heels that pinched and a heart that burned. Things used to feel warmer. That's the best word I can think of. Not perfect, but warm. My name's Olivia Martin, and for most of my life I've been the quiet type. I don't mean mousy. I mean the kind of quiet that holds a family together, the behind-the-scenes workhorse. A mother. A wife. A fixer. Richard and I built a modest life from almost nothing. He was a carpenter, the kind who'd work 12-hour days and still make time to sand a toy train for Jacob's 3rd birthday. I worked in bookkeeping at a local hardware distributor. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me just enough financial savvy to keep us out of trouble and on track. We paid off our mortgage, put Jacob through school, even managed to buy that little cabin up north when things were good. Jacob was a good kid, once. I used to think his laughter was the best sound I'd ever heard. He had this mop of curly brown hair and a habit of asking a million questions. He was sensitive, always needed reassurance, always watching for reactions. I used to wonder if that was just how boys were built. But somewhere along the way, maybe around the time he married Anna, something shifted. Not overnight, but slow, like rust creeping in under paint. He started showing up late for Sunday dinners. Answered my calls less. And when he did, his tone was clipped. Distant. Like I was an obligation. Something to be checked off a list. I made excuses, of course. He was busy. Work was demanding. Anna had a rough pregnancy. Life gets hectic. I told myself all of that until I could barely hear my own disappointment screaming in my chest. The real unraveling started after Richard's cancer diagnosis. My husband, the strongest man I've ever known, was gone in 11 months. He was quiet about it. Brave in that stubborn way men are. He didn't want treatments. Said he'd rather live fully for as long as he could than waste away in a hospital bed. And he meant it. During those months, I held everything together. Cooking, appointments, hospice visits. I kept our books balanced, answered sympathy cards, and handled Jacob, who, even then, seemed more irritated by the inconvenience of his father's illness than heartbroken. He came when it was convenient. Showed up in a suit, said all the right things, then left early. Always early. When Richard died, Jacob took the podium at the funeral like he was accepting a promotion. Smooth. Composed. My father taught me everything I know about hard work, he said, his voice echoing through the chapel. He was a man of integrity. A builder. A mentor. I watched from the front pew and felt numb. He'd rehearsed it. You could tell. But the betrayal wasn't in the eulogy. That came later, about 30 minutes later, to be exact. The reception was over. The guests were leaving. I slid into the passenger seat of Jacob's SUV still in my funeral clothes, a half-empty coffee cup in my hand. Anna wasn't with us, she'd driven separately with the baby. It was just the two of us for a short drive back to the house. We didn't even make it past the edge of town before he pulled over near a county road that runs between two cornfields. Flat, empty land on both sides. Not even a gas station in sight. "I think this is where we say goodbye," he said, putting the car in park. I blinked. "What?" He leaned back, hand still on the wheel, and stared straight ahead. "I talked to Mr. Dunley, the estate attorney. Everything's already transitioned." "Transitioned?" I echoed. "The business is mine now." "The house too," he said, like we were talking about grocery lists. "Dad's name is off everything. You're not listed on the business anymore. And Anna and I have decided it's better if you find your own place." I stared at him, my ears ringing. "You're kicking me out of my home?" He finally looked at me. "It's not your home anymore, Mom. You've got your bag, you'll figure it out." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. "I'll arrange to have the rest of your stuff boxed and dropped off. No need to make this harder than it has to be," he added, like he was doing me a favor. And just like that, he reached across me, opened my door, and said, "Take care of yourself." The door clicked shut behind me. I stood there as his SUV pulled away, dust rising behind the tires. My feet sunk slightly into the shoulder gravel. The air smelled like dirt and diesel and grief. I clutched my purse like a lifeline. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk screeched. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it shows up in a suit, with legal documents, and the voice of someone you spent your whole life protecting. The house? Gone. The business? Transferred without my consent. Richard and I had built it from the ground up, a small contracting firm, honest work. When Richard fell ill, Jacob stepped in to help. He said he was streamlining things, making things easier. I was grieving. I wasn't thinking straight. And while I was buried in hospice schedules and end-of-life paperwork, Jacob had Mr. Dunley quietly update the LLC ownership, redirect the revenue accounts, and move the house deed, all under the justification of simplification and long-term estate planning. He waited until my husband was in the ground to make it final. Back when life was simpler, I used to spend mornings on the porch with Richard, sipping coffee and reading the paper aloud to each other. We'd circle articles, debate op-eds, make gentle fun of bad headlines. Jacob would burst out the door in his pajamas looking for Pop-Tarts. We were a family. Not a perfect one, but real. I used to think that kind of history meant something. But I guess to Jacob, it was just the prelude to his inheritance. I remembered the little signs now. How Anna would always offer to help with the bills, and slowly took over managing them online. How Jacob had me sign a few documents under the pretense of emergency authorizations, telling me it was just in case something happened. How he changed the locks to upgrade security and never gave me a new key. They weren't details at the time. Not when you love someone. But in hindsight? Every detail was a stitch in the trap. I walked for over a mile that evening before I reached a gas station. A young man behind the counter offered me a bottle of water and let me use the phone. I called Martha. When she picked up, I didn't even get 2 words out before she said, "Where are you?" She found me 20 minutes later, parked under the blinking light of the Sinclair station like a guardian angel with bad shocks. I climbed into her passenger seat, my hand still clutching that same empty coffee cup. She didn't say much as she drove. Just kept glancing over at me every few minutes like she was making sure I didn't disappear. Halfway back to her place, I finally whispered, "He left me on the side of the road, Martha." My own son. She didn't gasp. Didn't ask what I did. She just gripped the wheel tighter and said, "Then it's time." "Time for what?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She turned to me, eyes steady. "To remind them who taught him everything he knows." That night, as I lay awake in Martha's guest room, I stared at the ceiling fan and realized something that chilled me more than the betrayal. He didn't even think I'd fight back. And that's when I remembered, the business wasn't just built by Richard's hands. The accounts, the structure, the documents. I created the foundation. And he just inherited a castle with no idea that I still held the keys buried under the floorboards. I didn't go to the business relaunch party, but I watched the photos roll in, one after the other, like a slideshow of everything I built, scrubbed clean of my name. They had strung twinkle lights across the fence I stained by hand. Set up a champagne bar on the patio. Richard and I poured ourselves one slab at a time. Jacob stood in the center of it all, chest puffed, shaking hands like he was running for office. His wife Anna stood beside him, flawless in a navy dress, her glass raised just high enough to show off the new diamond necklace, a gift from the company, according to the caption she posted on her private business Instagram. The company was mine. Or had been. Martin and Son Contracting. Except now, apparently, it was just Martin. No son, no mother. Just a man pretending he forged it all from dust. I closed the laptop slowly. I didn't need to see the rest. I already knew how the night ended, with applause, with congratulations, with people clinking glasses and asking Jacob how it felt to step into your father's shoes. He wasn't wearing Richard's shoes. He was wearing mine. After Jacob left me on the roadside that night, I stayed with Martha for a while. She had a small but cozy house, filled with soft rugs, good coffee, and the kind of silence that doesn't make you feel alone. We didn't talk much in the beginning. She knew better than to press. Instead, she gave me a set of keys and let me sleep. The next morning, I didn't go back to the house. I didn't call. Didn't beg. Didn't post some vague quote about family betrayal. I vanished. To them, I disappeared. The mail stopped. My number changed. The garden went untended. I deleted the old email address I shared with Jacob for family things. I canceled the quarterly magazine subscription Anna loved flipping through when she visited. I let the world assume I was grieving quietly and giving Jacob his space. He thought I'd surrendered. Let him think it. I sold the sedan and bought a little used hatchback off a private listing 2 towns over. Clean title, low mileage, no digital trail. I found a room to rent, not an apartment, just a tidy back unit behind a retired couple's home who didn't ask questions. I gave them cash for the first 3 months and told them my name was Liv. Just Liv. I cleared out the few remaining accounts I still had access to and froze every credit card Anna, had ever touched. She must have noticed, but she didn't reach out. Of course not. Reaching out meant acknowledging I still existed. And they needed me to disappear. Quietly. Permanently. So I did. To them. A week later, I ran into an old friend at the farmer's market. Susan Bell. We used to do church committees together before the migraine started and Jacob said it was too much stress for me. She looked startled. Olivia? Oh, honey, I heard about Richard. I am so sorry. I smiled gently. Thank you, Susan. That means a lot. She gave me the once-over, as women our age do. I was dressed differently than usual, darker jeans, a cardigan I'd never have worn before. No pearls. No smile that said I'm fine when I wasn't. You staying out of town for a bit? She asked. Something like that. She leaned in, almost conspiratorially. Jacob's been doing so well. That new investor party was beautiful. You must be proud. I'm sure it was, I said calmly. I didn't attend. She blinked. Oh. I thought maybe you'd moved out of the spotlight on purpose. I just smiled again. People think I've moved on. They're not entirely wrong. She blinked, caught off guard by the tone of my voice. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I just nodded politely and walked away, leaving her holding a bunch of kale and a question she didn't know how to ask. Over the next few weeks, I started to rebuild myself in small, deliberate pieces. I got a library card. Not for fiction, for research. I bought a plain black notebook and started making lists. Names. Dates. Account numbers. Ownership records. LLC filings. I didn't act yet. just observed. Quietly. Thoroughly. Martha introduced me to a woman named Jeanette, who used to work in estate law. Retired now, but still sharp as a tack. Over coffee, we talked about hypothetical inheritance transfers and accidental trust manipulations. "I'm asking for a friend," I told her with a smile. Jeanette didn't blink. "Then your friend needs to understand that a durable power of attorney is not a blank check. If your friend's daughter-in-law used it improperly, especially for personal gain, that's grounds for civil litigation." I nodded. "I'll pass that along." We met again 2 weeks later. Anna posted a photo of herself online, holding a champagne flute, standing in what used to be my backyard, wearing the silk shawl I bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. The caption read, "Cheers to new chapters and clean slates." Clean slates. I sat in my car, rereading that phrase while a slow, calm storm built behind my ribs. Clean slates? No. This wasn't a clean slate. It was a grave, and they buried me without checking if I was still breathing. Back at Martha's, I started changing. I don't mean I cut my hair or dyed it red and became some new woman. That's not how real life works. Real revenge doesn't need costumes. I changed quietly. I stopped flinching at kindness. I started saying no, even to small things. I rebuilt my confidence not with declarations, but decisions. I took long walks alone. I went through every document Jacob had filed through the business. I recognized my own handwriting on some forms I signed years ago without reading closely. The cost of trust. But I didn't cry about it. I just made copies. And I waited. One night, over tea, Martha asked me if I ever thought I'd speak to Jacob again. I stirred a spoon through my cup and said without blinking, "I will. Just not until he's standing on the edge, looking for a rope I already burned." The first crack in Jacob's perfect facade came from an email he was never supposed to send me. It arrived on a Tuesday morning. My new inbox, the one no one knew about, pinged with a forwarded invoice from Martin Contracting. It was clearly meant for Anna, but Jacob's tired thumbs had typed the wrong address. The subject line read, "Transfer before Friday, urgent." I opened it. My heart stayed calm. Inside was a spreadsheet of upcoming payments, payroll, contractor fees, vendor deposits. At the bottom, in bold, was a line item labeled Owner's Draw, $75,000. My old signature was still listed on the account, but I hadn't authorized a thing. He was siphoning money to a consulting firm registered in Anna's maiden name. That was my first real proof. I didn't delete it. I printed it. The next time I drove past the office, the one Richard and I built out of an old brick garage, I didn't go in. I just sat across the street, behind tinted windows, and watched. New logo on the door. New company trucks. Jacob walking out in a crisp shirt, checking his watch like a man too busy to notice the foundation beneath him cracking. I didn't hate him. Not exactly. Hate's too easy. What I felt was colder, like the way frost spreads across a windshield. Slow, silent, inevitable. He'd taken everything except the one thing he didn't understand: I'd built the system. The LLCs, the trusts, the tax shelters. Richard was the hands, I was the blueprint. And blueprints don't vanish. They stay in the drawer, waiting. I kept building my countermove in the shadows. I hired a private accountant under a different name. Paid her in cash. She went through every public record Jacob had touched. New property deeds. Corporate filings. Trademark applications. The more we looked, the more we found: quiet withdrawals disguised as business expansion, a small condo Anna had purchased in Boulder with company funds, a luxury SUV leased through the business. Piece by piece, their arrogance became my evidence. I didn't rush. Real revenge isn't a single blow. It's a slow, careful excavation until the structure caves under its own weight. In public, Jacob flourished. Local business journals wrote glowing profiles, a new generation revitalizing a family brand. Anna posted polished photos of community outreach projects, playgrounds built with Martin materials and volunteers. No one saw the unpaid invoices stacking up in the background. The quiet grumbles from subcontractors. The whispered doubts from longtime suppliers. But I did. Because I had friends still on the inside. People who remembered who actually signed their first checks. I started taking quiet lunches with them. Old foremen. Former office staff. Just catching up, I'd say. I asked gentle questions. Listened more than I spoke. They told me things they hadn't even realized they'd noticed: missing inventory, delayed payments, tax forms with odd discrepancies. I wrote it all down in my black notebook. One afternoon, Anna spotted me at the farmer's market. She was alone, holding a latte, scanning for the photographer she'd hired to snap candid photos. Her eyes flicked over me once, then again. For a split second, her smile faltered. "Olivia," she said, like she wasn't sure I was real. I smiled softly. "Anna. You look different," she said. Her tone was too casual, like she was trying to sound unbothered but couldn't quite get there. "I am," I said. "How's the business?" She hesitated, just for a heartbeat, before smoothing it over. "Thriving. Jacob's been amazing. We're really building something." "I'm sure you are." I started to walk away. She called after me, "We should catch up soon." I turned back just enough to give her a small, unreadable smile. "Enjoy it while it lasts." Her face flickered. She opened her mouth to ask what I meant, but I was already gone, blending into the crowd. From that day on, I could feel them starting to squirm. Little things. Jacob called Martha twice just to check in. Anna left a voicemail on my old number, sounding sweet but strained. "We'd really love to see you, Mom. We've missed you." They hadn't missed me. They'd started to sense the weather changing. I stayed silent. I expanded my circle quietly. Jeanette, the retired attorney, connected me with a forensic accountant who owed her a favor. We met at a coffee shop 2 towns over. She was brisk, efficient, and didn't blink when I slid the first stack of documents across the table. "Do you want restitution or leverage?" she asked. "Both," I said. She nodded. "Then you're going to need more than bank statements. You'll need a timeline, witnesses, and a trigger point." "I'm working on it." She closed the folder. "Work faster. People like your son and his wife, they spend like it's endless. The moment it's not, they'll turn on each other. You want to be ready before that happens." I sipped my coffee. "Oh, I will." Meanwhile, Jacob got bolder. At the county fair, he gave a speech about legacy and building on the shoulders of those who came before. He even thanked my late father, Richard Martin, but not me. Not even a polite nod. Someone sent me a video of it. I watched him smiling on stage, the crowd clapping. And then I watched the comments below, little hints of skepticism from local contractors who'd been burned lately. People starting to ask, "Where's Olivia? Wasn't she the one who kept that place running?" The cracks were forming, and they didn't even see them yet. I knew the trigger point would be financial. It always is. Anna liked to live large. Jacob liked to impress. They'd been riding the wave of my silence for months. But waves run out of shore. I started moving my hidden pieces into place. Revoking old authorizations. Filing quiet notices of ownership. Drafting affidavits. Setting up meetings with suppliers under a pseudonym to warn them of upcoming irregularities. I didn't tell anyone my full plan. Not even Martha. She'd sit across from me at her kitchen table, brow furrowed, and say, "You're awfully calm, Liv." "I'm just done waiting," I'd say. The last piece I needed was direct proof of intent. Not just sloppy bookkeeping or mismanagement, but a clear attempt to erase me. I didn't have to wait long. One Friday afternoon, a courier dropped a manila envelope at my rental's front door. Inside was a single-page letter, and signed but clearly written by Anna. It was a settlement offer, offering me a small monthly stipend in exchange for waiving any future claims or challenges regarding Martin Contracting, the family residence, and associated properties. They wanted me gone legally. Permanently. I ran my thumb over the paper, feeling the edge of the trap. They were offering me hush money, small enough to insult, but just big enough to make them look generous if it ever went public. I didn't sign it. I didn't even respond. I tucked it into my black notebook with the rest of the evidence. That night, I stood at the edge of the old lake near our cabin. The water was still, reflecting the sky like glass. In the distance, a loon called once and fell silent. I whispered into the air, "It's almost time, Richard. They think I'm irrelevant now. But you taught me better." And for the first time in months, I felt the old warmth in my chest, not grief, not fear. Just readiness. Jacob stood on stage, toasting his new era with champagne, and I let him finish every last word before I pulled the rug out from under him. They'd rented the town's historic hall for a legacy celebration. Rows of folding chairs, rented uplighting, a projector scrolling through images of Martin Contracting's proud history, Richard hammering a beam, Jacob shaking hands with a city official, Anna cutting a ribbon at a playground. I wasn't invited. Of course not. But my name was still on the building lease. And on the insurance. And, as of 2 weeks ago, on the corporate ownership filings that Jacob hadn't bothered to check. I walked in quietly during the speech. No big entrance. Just another middle-aged woman in a navy coat slipping into the back row. No one noticed until it was too late. Jacob, at the podium, held up his glass. "We're so proud to continue my father's dream," he said, his smile bright. "And we're excited to announce a major expansion, a second location opening next spring." Applause. Cameras. Anna glowing at his side. That was my cue. While Jacob basked, my attorney Mr. Dalton stepped onto the small stage from the wings, carrying a thin folder. He leaned into the microphone. "Pardon the interruption. I have a brief announcement regarding Martin Contracting." The room murmured. Jacob's smile froze. "What is this?" he hissed, but Dalton kept reading. "Effective immediately," Dalton said, "control of Martin Contracting, including all accounts, properties, and associated assets, has reverted to Olivia Martin under provisions filed with the state last quarter." Gasps rippled across the room. Anna's hand shot up like she could stop the words midair. "That's not possible," she snapped. Dalton's eyes were mild. "It's not only possible, it's been processed. Your recent attempts to transfer ownership were invalidated due to misrepresentation under a durable power of attorney. Additionally, the company's bank accounts are now frozen pending a full audit." Jacob dropped his champagne glass. It rolled off the podium and shattered on the floor. For a second, no one moved. Then Jacob turned, scanning the crowd until his eyes found me at the back. "Mom," he said. His voice cracked just slightly. I walked forward slowly. No rush. Just steady steps until I stood a few feet from the stage. "Hello, Jacob. What are you doing?" His voice was tight, low, like we were still in his SUV on that deserted road. "What you taught me," I said softly. "Cleaning up after you." The first crack, Dalton handed Jacob a sealed envelope. Inside is a notice of reversal, proof of unauthorized transactions, and a restraining order preventing you from accessing corporate accounts. Jacob didn't open it. He just stared at me. "You set me up," he whispered. "No," I said. "You set yourself up. I just stopped you before you ruined everything your father built." Anna finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous. We've been running this company for months. Everyone knows it." "Running it into the ground," Dalton said calmly. "Misappropriating funds. Buying personal property under the company's name. That's not just unethical, Mrs. Martin. It's illegal. Murmurs from the crowd grew louder. A supplier I'd known for years leaned to his colleague and whispered, I knew something was off. Jacob tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. You can't just walk back in and take over. I met his eyes. I never left. Jacob opened the envelope finally. His face went pale as he flipped through the pages, bank statements, emails, the settlement offer Anna had sent me, invoices for the condo, the SUV lease, the transfers to Anna's consulting firm. At the bottom was my affidavit revoking every authorization they'd used. You've been spying on us, he said. No, I said. I've been documenting you. The room had gone silent except for the faint hum of the projector. Dalton stepped aside so I could take the microphone. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, I began, my voice even. But since my name and my husband's work are on every one of those slides, I think it's only fair you hear the truth. I let my eyes move across the room. Old employees. New investors. Contractors. People who'd known Richard, known me, known Jacob as a boy. When my husband got sick, I said, I trusted my son and his wife to help. While I was taking care of a dying man, they moved papers behind my back. They changed ownership, redirected accounts, and left me on the side of the road after his funeral. Gasps. Anna's face went blotchy red. Jacob tried to interject, but I raised a hand and the room actually hushed. They thought I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't fight. That I'd just fade away. But Richard and I built this company together. And I built protections into it, protections they didn't know existed. Last month, I exercised those protections. As of today, Martin Contracting is under my sole control. I paused. Any vendors or staff awaiting payment will be made whole immediately. Any investor misled by recent activities will receive a full accounting. But Jacob and Anna are no longer involved in this business. Jacob's jaw worked. You can't do this, he said again, but the power had drained from his voice. Already did, Dalton said behind me. Anna hissed something under her breath and started gathering her things. She slipped toward the exit but stopped when two uniformed deputies stepped into the hall. Not arrests, just a civil service team delivering notices. They handed her a packet. She snatched it, flipped through, then looked at Jacob in shock. What is this? She demanded. Notice of investigation, Dalton said. Regarding misuse of funds and attempted coercion of a protected person. The evidence has been submitted to the county. Anna turned on Jacob. You told me this was safe, she whispered, but loud enough for half the room to hear. Jacob closed his eyes. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just set the microphone back on the stand and said, I hope someday you'll understand what you threw away. Then I walked out. The panic moment, out in the cool night air, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Jacob. I didn't pick up, but I listened later in the car. Mom, please, he said, his voice cracking. You've made your point. We're sorry. Just, don't destroy us. We have nothing without the company. I closed my eyes and for a moment saw the little boy with the mop of curly hair asking me endless questions. But then I remembered the roadside, the power of attorney papers, the clean slate caption. They'd already destroyed themselves. I just stopped pretending not to see it. The full reveal, to the viewer. In the weeks after that night, everything unraveled for Jacob and Anna. The bank audit confirmed the transfers. The condo was seized as a misused corporate asset. Their SUV was repossessed. Suppliers returned once a guaranteed payment under my name, but none wanted to work with Jacob again. The investor they'd bragged about turned out to be a middleman for a developer, who pulled out the moment he saw the legal mess. Within a month, Jacob and Anna had sold their personal home to cover legal fees. The house they thought was theirs? It was still under a trust Richard and I had set up years earlier. When the trust revoked their occupancy, they had to vacate. I didn't have them arrested. I wasn't interested in jail. I was interested in boundaries and accountability. I offered them one. A modest monthly stipend if they signed a confession of wrongdoing and a permanent relinquishment of claims. They signed. I bought them a small rental 2 towns over. Nothing fancy. And then I stepped back. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fix them. I fixed me. The company, under my control again, stabilized. I brought back the old staff who'd left under Jacob's management. We rebuilt slowly, focusing on the kind of work Richard believed in. Local, honest, sustainable. I didn't plaster my face on social media. I didn't host parties. I just got back to work. One evening, months later, Jacob showed up at my office. He looked older. Thinner. The arrogance gone, replaced by something that almost looked like humility. He stood in the doorway for a long moment. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. I didn't answer. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," he added. I studied him. He looked like the boy who used to hand me nails while Richard built him a treehouse. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of that boy again. "I hope you mean that," I said finally. "For your sake." He nodded, eyes downcast, and left. I didn't stop him. That night, I sat alone in the office, looking at a photo of Richard and me on the day we signed the business license. My thumb traced the edge of the frame. "They thought they erased me," I whispered. "All they did was give me a clean page, and I wrote the ending myself." I turned off the light, locked the door, and stepped into the cool night air. For the first time in years, the future felt like mine.